UK City of Culture competition really arose as a response to the European Capital of Culture, which has been going for, about 30 years now. And you may remember that Liverpool had the European Capital of Culture title back in 2008. And before that, Glasgow had it in 1990. And really, as a result of the success of the experience for those two cities of hosting the Capital of Culture, a man called Phil Redmond, who made Brookside and Hollyoaks and various other major productions from Liverpool, decided that it would be a much better idea to have a more regular opportunity for UK cities to be able to have this brilliant experience. So he persuaded the government in Britain to set up a competition for UK cities to compete every 4 years to have the City of Culture title. And that's how it came about. And Derry competed, I think, originally against about 14 cities, was shortlisted down to the final 4, and in July 2010 was announced as the winner, and the rest is history. I think for me personally, the joy of the experience was in 2 different levels. One was, the first and probably most important, was that I amassed a team of people to work with me for the last 3 years, who are without exception the best, most talented, skilled, dedicated team of people I've ever had the pleasure of working with. So that in itself brings a level of joy and camaraderie, and even through all the challenges and difficulties, to just have such a brilliant team of people is the thing that I really take away most from it all. In terms of the actual events and the activities, I still kind of smile when I think about the very first event of the whole year, which was the tea dance. And there's a kind of history in the city of the mayor's tea dance once a month, but always kind of happened on a fairly small scale. And we decided that we would take that part of the history of the city, but do it large and do it special. So the venue, that was the temporary space to host major events during the year, we took over on the 5th of January and had a big band and just transformed the place and made it sparkly and beautiful, and got out the best china and bussed 1,000 senior citizens from around the city to the venue on a rainy Saturday afternoon to dance. And dance they did. They were amazing, and just the kind of response we got from just ordinary local people of the city after that, I think set the tone for the whole year, that this is about people from the city. It's about them coming out and participating and enjoying themselves. So that was kind of a major highlight for me. Then the return of Colmkill, you mentioned, will stand out as, I think, probably the event that most typified what we were trying to achieve. And that was for a number of reasons, because it took a legendary figure from the story of the city, and it put him into the foreground. So it was very rooted to and connected to Derry. Then we brought a brilliant writer like Frank Cottrell-Boyce to actually create a narrative and a structure around that story of Colmkill's return to the city.
Really, Frank's success here this year, which I was really sad to miss, but it's amazing being here today and hearing about it, and crossing the bridge, really, I suppose. Yeah. It's because I've been in Derry many times before, but I'd never seen the bridge, and it sort of passed me by, really, in a way, and I know it's a wonderful thing, really. You should be so proud of it. And I'm so delighted that he was able to celebrate that with you all this year, and obviously what was a huge success.
And then we brought the kind of technical genius of a company like Walk the Plank. And then the crucial element was we wanted to have local people perform the roles. So we recruited over 1,000 volunteers from the local community to play out the story of the return of Colmkill to the city. So that combination of a story that is of and from here, with the external brilliance of Frank and Walk the Plank, then combined with the sheer participation, goodwill and talent of local people. aside from anything else, the kind of spectacular on the river with the fire-breathing monster coming up to do battle with his old foe, Columba. Then I suppose that great finale where instead of defeating the Loch Ness Monster, his old foe, Columba transforms him into the swans of Lear. So again, you're back into myth and legend, and I just thought it was kind of epic and beautiful and engaging. So that was a real highlight for me. And then Lumiere was just dazzling because it was, I think, kind of spiritual and beautiful to see so many people out on the street with no alcohol and kind of cross-generational, and just seeing the looks on people's faces, they were kind of mesmerised by something that was just simply beautiful. How Lumiere came about is quite an interesting one, because when we were looking at the whole year, and the programme didn't just come about sort of magically. We tested ideas and we come up with drafts of what might happen at different points of the year, and we were trying all the time to get the right rhythm and to get something that would have highlights and then give people a break, and then have another highlight and then give people a break. And then we went through the year and you had things like One Big Weekend, and then you had quieter times, and then you had the return of Colmkill, and then you had the Fla, and so there were these kind of peak moments, and at the start we knew we needed something really, really exceptional for the winter months. So we invited Helen Marriage and Nikki from Artichoke to come over to Derry and to give us an indication of some of the things that they might be able to do. Now, because it's all about commissioning artists, mostly what you're getting is new work. So what Artichoke were able to do was give us a glimpse of the kind of things they'd done in the past. But we didn't want something that was just derivative of another place. We wanted something that was very bespoke to here. So we did a lot of walking around. We introduced them to key players in the city council, like Danny Meenan and John Kelpie. We took them to the parks. We took them all around the city, because we were also really clear that we didn't want it to be just a city centre focused thing. And Artichoke got very excited, because Derry is a great city and it has great stories and great places. And they then come up with some suggestions and ideas that would really respond to this place. So, for example, the Teenage Kicks piece, the Teenage Dreams Are Hard to Beat, that was done as a neon sign, and the Stitch in Time, that kind of reflects back to the shirt factories. And then the taking over of St. Colum's Park with the Fire Garden was just, when we saw even a hint of what that might be like, we knew that it would be something really magical. And then taking Austin's, kind of one of the oldest department stores in Europe, and transforming Austin's with projections. And one of the ones that I really loved was the kind of empty or deserted playground that they created down at the gas yard, which is just really kind of spiritual and mysterious and ghostly and weird. And I think kind of overall, for a winter-based event coming up to the end of the City of Culture year, it just really worked. And we had 179,000 people over the 4 nights to see and experience and be part of Lumiere. And I think that kind of really speaks for itself, and it's probably the one we've had the most positive feedback from people, just spontaneously coming back to us and saying, wow, never thought this could happen in my city. It was really magical.
I think a lot of the children who were there, sitting on their daddy's shoulders, will have that, embedded in their memory for most of their lives. That was one highlight. For me, there were a lot of musical highlights that I enjoyed. The Fla was another obvious one. For an entire week, this was like walking through some kind of musical heaven, really, because the weather was so fabulous, the people were so just deliriously happy. There was music coming from every corner of the city, and there's all these stalls selling everything under the sun down along the quayside. And everybody you met was in such great form, smiling, saying, "Isn't the city wonderful? Aren't people so welcoming. You see the policemen walking around in the middle of the crowds, having that crack and joking with each other. So, I mean, that, for me, that kind of the atmosphere that was created by big outdoor occasions like that probably would be the highlight. There was a lot of stuff with concerts and so on as well. I mean, it was week after week after week. This is where it's difficult to pick out, just one thing. But I had to do a programme every month, and therefore I try to make every month as enjoyable as possible for an audience watching the programme. So I had a kind of a best interest in making everything a highlight.
Again, I mean, I when I talk about how Frank Cottrell Boyce came to the city, I'll reflect back on the brilliant team that I had, because collectively we all brought something to the mix. So Graham, who was one of the lead programmers, had said, we need a big public spectacle. We need a storytelling element that brings local people out onto the street. And when I thought about that, I thought, well, that's got to be Columba. It's got to be Colmkill, because that is the epic story of this place. And then Martin Malarkey, another one of our programmers, said, I know the man. I know who can write this piece for us. Frank Cottrell Boyce, and Marty has a kind of encyclopedic knowledge of writers and filmmakers, and Frank, not everybody knows, is actually obsessed with the lives of the saints, and he's a man from Liverpool. He has 7 children, all of whom are named after the saints. So Marty literally got on a bus, as Derry men are wont to do, and headed off down to Belfast because he knew Frank was speaking at an event down there, and pigeonholed him with this little book about Columba and said, Frank, there's something you've got to do. And I think Frank took one look at it, took one look at Marty and his parka and his determination, and said, that's it, yeah, definitely, this is a story that I can't say no to. And he came to Derry, and he came with incredible goodwill. Instead of staying in the city hotel or one of the kind of lovely hotel accommodations in the city, he rented a house in the Bogside and just really became part of the fabric of the community that he was going to write about. And I think that's a real measure of Frank. And he had just come fresh from doing the Olympics opening ceremony, so we were really privileged to have him, and to have somebody of his skill and insight, but also just a really lovely, warm human being, who really worked in this context and did a great job.
The city has changed incredibly, and I've been very lucky to witness it partly from a distance and partly from sometimes visiting. And it is amazing to walk across your bridge today, which I have to say, I was very, very moved by what you've done building that bridge, and then going to the Turnpike on the other side of it. And I hope that in some way that the screening of Trainspotting tonight will contribute to the feeling of that you've generated wondrously for a year of culture, capital culture. And thank you very much. That's it.
I think that the year started off quite slowly, so you still have that kind of scepticism amongst a lot of people. Is this going to be a bit of a dud? Is it all hype, but it's not going to live up to expectations? But I think as the year wore on, and you had some of the big, spectacular, and very successful events, I think the tone was set quite early on, when you had, a wonderful New Year's firework display. It gives people a wee bit of hope, expectation. This is going to be something special. And as the time wore on, I think the mood grew more and more joyful. I think people really began to see the success of certain events, and that spread on to the next event and so on. I think that generally, I described it halfway through the year, I think, or maybe a bit later than that. There was a kind of a transformation. There was a lot of work put onto making the city look well. A lot of it was put into improving buildings, improving the appearance of the quayside, of the Guildhall Square. Places were spruced up, flowers were everywhere, and so on. And somebody said the place is transformed, and it was in a way transformed. I mean, if you'd gone down that walked down the embankment, several years ago as opposed to nowadays. Yeah, it's a complete transformation. But I think the biggest transformation was in people, in their attitude towards the city, because I think you had a big growth in pride. People were, proud to say, yes, I'm from here, and this is a place that I think is looking wonderful, and it's part of my heritage. This is where my family came from. This is where I walk day in and day out. And I don't care how, cynical or hard-bitten you are, if somebody's constantly praising your city, praising your town, and that's bound to make you feel better about your own place.
You've caught me to do this interview on my very last day in the job in Culture Company, so I feel really weird actually. I feel emotional because it has been such a 100% immersive journey. For 3 years of my life, I have ate, slept, breathed, thought City of Culture from morning to night, as have my poor family by default. But so I feel really emotional today. It's been, I think, the kind of the deconstruction of a team, in the same way as your first question about what were my highlights. Is the real joy of the process was working with such a brilliant group of people. So you feel that sense of loss and bereavement nearly when your team is deconstructed. Of course, you'll see all of these people again, but never again in that kind of intense, collaborative, collegiate way that we've all just been through. I'm really very proud and very happy because the feedback from everybody, especially the city itself, is that it was an extraordinary year here. So I feel like we've done a good job, and I'm very proud of that. I'd also be lying if I didn't say I have concerns and worries about the legacy, and about just how much value is placed on the approach and those things, the social value and the impact of the project that isn't about economics. I'm not sure that enough importance is being given to just what really happened here last year, that isn't about bed nights and it isn't about tourists and it isn't about the number of businesses opened. So I do have concerns and worries about the legacy. I think the best examples of cities of culture around the world are those who valued people.
Ready for the flag?
And who realised the kind of skill and capacity that is developed in their own people who are involved in delivering the year. To lose that, to me, seems a bit criminal. And if I'm being honest, I don't think Derry has placed enough importance on wanting to keep and value, especially people in the programming team and the marketing team who just really did such an incredible job. And to me, they should be celebrated and at the heart of the legacy going forward. And at the minute, I don't see that. And I think the local authorities have probably naively kind of decided, having watched what went on over the last 3 years, that we can do it all ourselves now, and I think that's a mistake. And I hope it's something that can be rectified and is only a short-term thing, because I think an incredible foundation has been set in place, and it should be developed and built on and celebrated.